Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. The Bible says, the Lord had said to Abraham, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. Remember, this is God speaking to a man called Abraham, a person just like you and me, all right? God is speaking to him. God can speak today. We need to remember that, okay? The way that God spoke to Abraham, God can speak to us, but I'm not the preacher, so I'm just going to keep reading. Sorry. I will make you. God said, I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, them I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. So Abram left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Haran. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Haran. And they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram traveled throughout the land as far as the site of the great tree of Morah at Shechem. At the time, the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he went towards the hills of East Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued towards the Negev. Okay, a story of calling. Adam has got some strange costume on for some reason.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Is that yours?
No, it's not.
Thanks, mate.
No worries. Thank you. Right. Yeah, we'll get to it. So, cheers, mate. I was going to open up with, I have got a story about a friend, but my opening line was just going to be, I have a friend, and then I realised I'm just a weirdo in a scout outfit. Look at the pictures! You're a terrible man! I regret this immediately. But yeah, we are going to talk about the outdoors life. Now, those of you who know me, which is not everybody, will know I am not an outdoorsman. I am the opposite of an outdoorsman. I am an indoor man. I am an accountant. I can't build things. But I have these kind of friends. And these friends, they put things on their Instagram like this. I'll just built a new desk for my office because, it's a weekend. Oh, yeah, well, as you do. Of course, why not? What else would you do? Sleep in. That's what you could do. Oh, I've got a new saw. Look at this, my new... can't believe I didn't think about this before. Yeah, you idiot. Why didn't you, eh? How would you manage previously without that? And so I went to see this friend for a weekend. Just to marvel in his man skills. And so he was there building his own house effectively. And so I turned up and it was just nice. We stayed there for a weekend. And he said, oh, let's just go for a walk. I was, oh, okay. And he lives proper up in the Yorkshire Dales. I mean, just a nice little walk. What can go wrong? Well, what can go wrong is that I could slip down a slope, lean against a wall which crumbles, falls in an avalanche of rocks, and nearly breaking his wife's leg. That can go wrong. Oh, that can go wrong. Yeah, you're not kidding. And this is what happens when you go outside. Okay, and so this is the outdoors problem, is that you go out and people may die. And so if you're an indoors man and you get called on a walk, be very careful. They were very happy. I mean, his wife was less happy. She looks pretty happy there. She wasn't that pleased. They kept sending me pictures repeatedly about the wound. Throughout the week, I just kept getting another picture. I didn't even want to open them in the end. I was like, oh, all right, I get it. I get the guilt. And so we're going to look at the kind of calling of Abraham and the thing that we're going to call the outdoor life. But by the outdoor life, we're not talking about you having to be a real practical man like Les Dunn who can build everything. We're not talking about that. Thank goodness. So if you're terrible at these kind of things, stay with us. Okay, and so by the outdoor life, what we mean is being called out of our comfort zone, out of just our routine, just the norm, doing the same old, and called into something else, and called into something better, and called into something new. And so if we look at the kind of story of Abraham, we're going to see that this is a guy who knew what it was to live by faith. And we're going to see in the verse that Luke has just read in chapter 12, it starts by telling us that kind of God just calls him and says, leave your land, leave the land you're in, all your possessions, and go where I'm going to show you. But before that, in chapter 11, which Lucas didn't read, it says that Abraham set out to go to a place called Canaan. but then he came to a land called Haran, and he just settled there. And he was just stopped there, and he was just on pause. And many of us live our lives like that. We kind of work, and we get tired, we come home, and we just, shut the curtains, binge watch TV, and it is what it is. I'm not saying none of us should go and watch TV or anything like that. I'm just saying if we do that all the time, our lives are at best, they're on pause. And Abraham was a guy who was kind of on pause. He was there, he was settled in a place where he hadn't been. And in verse kind of 1 of the passage, it says, go to a place that I am going to show you, from your country, your people, and your father's house to a place I am going to show you. And that, for me, is worryingly vague. Like, that is not enough. Like, I am an accountant. I want details. Don't give me I'll just go somewhere and I will show you. That would terrify me, okay? And so, but God just says, just go. And, I just need to leave everything and go. Oh, yeah, okay, no problems. And so instead, the guy decides, well, that's what I'm going to do. Now, I don't think God is being particularly harsh and hard-line by not giving him really detailed directions, because I think sometimes when we get given overly detailed directions that we just think we need to follow blindly, well, then it can lead badly. It can end badly. So, the machine knows. We just trust the sat-nav. Many of us have gone to all kinds of places going, does it mean right, or does it mean right at this roundabout? And before you know it, you are lost. Now, a few of us went on a men's weekend recently. Now, who in the room came on the men's weekend with us? 3, 4 of you hardy souls. And it was a great men's weekend. However, 3 of us had to work late. So we turned up later than everybody else who'd been guided there by the person who knew the way. So we were given a map. And we were given a map. And I'm not going to blame anybody, but I'm just saying somebody who will remain nameless gave us a map. Okay, and so we were given a map. Okay, and so it's not important who it was, but they gave us a map. And so 3 of us would come in there late at night in the dark. Now, I flipped this map round sideways, so that way it's meant to be, didn't really work the other way. Now, you can't see the narrative on there, but on that map it says, this map is more than enough. Now, the person who had given us this map, they had not reckoned for the fact that I am not an outdoors man. Okay, and so you might think that that is more than enough. But on that map, you've got 2 arrows there. I've even got, you can't really see the laser thing. But that bottom line there is where we should have been following. We go on across that arrow, and that second arrow on the right is where we were going. Now, up on the sort of top left, you'll see all the roads converge into one. Now, for me, that smells problems, because you could not take that route, and you can instead take that route. Oh, yes, there we were. And so, but obviously we have no idea we've taken that route. The 3 hardy, brave souls, only one of which is still here to tell the tale. So that's all right, Sean. Me and Sean. Rich is not here, still recovering, I suspect. So we walked, and we walked, and we walked, and it was raining, and I am a glasses wearer. And in the rain, you have a problem, because you've got this horrible rain, so you can't see, so you take your glasses off, and then you can't see. So either way, at best, I'm up a mountain blind. And so we are mountain is not true. We're up a big hill blind. And so we're going, just walking and walking and walking and thinking, well, I think we're probably just going to die. And so we were just we'd done for about an hour and 50 minutes, and we're just stuck and we're lost. Now I'm going to leave that there for a second. That is not the end, but we're going to move away from that for a second. But we are lost on a hill. And the thing is that as soon as we stop, just start running off on our own direction and just going to go, right, God, leave that with us, we've got this now, and we walk away, we can quite quickly become lost. Like Abraham, I wasn't really moving, but just because he wasn't moving, he was still lost. He wasn't in a place where he should be, And God doesn't give us these kind of crazy directions and say, right, I'll see you in heaven, here's your instructions, see you later. The whole point is that God wants us to walk with him, to be connected to him, have influence with him. Like when Jesus came down, he didn't just come and give us a list of rules. He came and he said, right, I want to build people around me and I want to walk with them for 3 years. I want to show them about life. Because there was a bunch of people in Jesus' day that thought they had the rules down. And they thought they knew all the stuff. They'd read the law, they got it. But the problem is, because they thought they knew so much, they were so lost. Because when Jesus came and Jesus was like, I'm God, that did not fit with their understanding of the rules. That did not fit with the kind of instructions and theology that they built. And they just missed him. And they didn't know it, but they're so lost. And so when Jesus came, he's not coming as a distant kind of God waiting for us on the other side. He's coming to draw alongside us. And And Lucas sent a text today. I mean, he sends obviously many texts, but this one was a good one. And so, I mean, they're all right, but this one was better than the average. So, you know, it's worth reading 1 in 5, maybe something like that. And so I can see the resentment in his face. He's not going to run up, so it's fine. And so it said in this, it was a quote from a guy called John Ortberg, and it said, "My main job is to remain connected to God. When my primary focus is being present with him, everything else has a way of falling into place. When my primary focus becomes anything else, I become a lesser version of myself." And so in that quote, the guy is not saying that when my primary focus is being present with God, life is easy. He's not meaning that. He's saying that even when life is tough, he knows who he is. He knows his identity when he's close to God. He knows what he should be doing. And for me, the bit that really speaks to me is that last bit, when my primary focus becomes anything else, I become a lesser version of myself. And so that is so true when we just think, right, God, I've got this, or when hard times come, and the first thing to go is that kind of quiet, still moments with God. And before you know it, things are just chaotic. Things around you, you're just trying to do your best, and before you know, you just feel like you're swimming against the tide, and that life is terrible, and you're all kinds of lost. And I know this year we're going to get into some stuff, and many of you will know this year has been really difficult in many ways. And so I know what this guy is saying when he's saying being present with God. It's not just, doesn't change the situation, doesn't make it easy, but I know what it is to kind of go through that difficulty when you're not focusing on God, and how the chaos is and how much you really beat yourself up. And then when you really trust God, it just changes things inside you. It changes your life. It changes who you are. It changes that kind of inside life. And some guy said to me recently, he said, like, he's going through a tough time, and he said, like, how do you cope? And then he just said, do not just say prayer. And I understand, like, the angry, just don't give me an easy answer, just say, just pray loads. I get it. Like, that's fine. I'm not just going to throw him, just pray and it'll be sorted. But at the same time, I don't know how you walk through difficult situations without staying close to God and get through it well. I just don't, because I could see the way I can get through situations without God. I become a person that I don't really like that much. I need to go through these things with God, otherwise I'm a mess. Otherwise, I'm just not the kind of guy that I believe that he's called me to be. And so this year, I'm going to kind of be walking into some unknown stuff. I'm taking over the youth stuff this Friday. I know, but I know. Yeah, they cheer now. They ain't going to be cheering in a few weeks, are they? But we'll see, hey? We'll see. I like our youth. They are chaos. Well, that's all right, because I'm a man dressed as a scout. And so in case you hadn't worked out, some of you might have been thinking, is that a scout? It is a scout. And so chaos is fine. And so somebody said to me, like, what's your plan for the youth? And I kind of jokingly was like, I don't have a plan. And they looked at me terrified. I do have a bit of a plan. We're having a meeting this afternoon. We'll see the plan. But the main plan is that they walk with God. The main plan is not to organise these great events and stuff, and we will do that. That's not the point of it. Everything we do is to show these guys, we want you to walk with God. We want you to know what it is to walk alongside him day by day. And we can only model that if we are people who do it ourselves. Like, I can't say I want that to be there for our young people if I'm not trying to do that myself. If I'm not a person who's kind of saying, right, God, I'm going to walk with you through this life. I'm going to spend time. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to be close to you. Otherwise, I'm trying to lead people into a place where I'm not myself. The second thing that we see in the story of Abraham is that the team that he goes with is not a perfect team. Okay, and so in verse 4 and 5, it tells us that his nephew Lot went with him, and it tells us that Abraham was 75 years old. So you've got an old fella, and you've got his nephew, and his wife, and all the rest of the families and stuff as well. But like these, as you read through the story, this is not a dream team. Lot is a guy who makes loads of mistakes. He gets into trouble. He has to be bailed out. Abraham and Sarah make mistakes. They get panicky. They lie. They try and kind of sort things out themselves. This is not a story of perfection. This is just a story of people trying, but people who know what it is to come back and trust God, even when they've taken a wrong turn and they've made a mistake. And so the good thing about that is that we live in a dysfunctional family. And so I, thankfully, have grown up around an imperfect team. Like one of my best friends who is not here, and I suspect he's not here because he knew what was coming. And so he lives in Manchester now. We grew up together when I've known him for 20 years or more. And one of my favourite stories of him is when he was 17 and he passed his driving test. And it's grim when you've just passed, isn't it? Like, everything seems impossible when you've just passed your driving test. And so, like, he had a real problem with stalling and then panicking and therefore restalling. And then he got himself in this mental block where he would just stall it repeatedly. And the point is, at this junction here, on the kind of spar on the left there, he was pulling out to just go home, and then he stalled just as he was leaving the spar, just as he was leaving the kind of car park. And so he was like, fine. So then he started it again, and he juddered forward, and he stalled again. And he kept going, and he kept going. And 8 times later, that's a terrible bit of Photoshop, but it is what it is. And so 8 times later, he's just there blocking all lanes. And so he keeps stalling. And people in the car cannot breathe because they're laughing at him so much. And because it's obviously amazing. You're with a guy who's just, everyone's beeping, cars are going round on the pavement, people are shouting at him, and he's going, oh my goodness, I stalled again! And everyone just, they were gone. And so he hates it. But these are the people that God has placed around my life. And I need this because I'm the kind of person that if you go on a walk with me, I might break the leg of your loved ones. And so therefore, it's important. Talking of dysfunctional families and imperfect teams, this is my life group. And so, yeah, I don't know what they're proud of. You have no idea what I'm about to say. And so, but they are an imperfect team. There are many stories, some of which were vetoed from this morning because they did not want to be embarrassed too much. Who knew? They have a line. And so, but all I'm saying is one of those guys came on the weekend away with us, didn't you, Sean? And so he kind of rifled through my toiletries bag to get my toothpaste to brush his teeth in the morning. Then afterwards said, was that liquid? Was that your toothpaste? I said, no, Sean, this is my toothpaste here. He said, I've just cleaned my teeth with shower gel, haven't I? Yes, you have, Sean. Yes, you have. Imagine how grim that must be. And why don't you know instantly? How bad is your toothpaste at home, Sean? You think, oh, this seems right. This seems right. And so these are the people that God has given me with, which is good. And you might think, well, okay, I'm just blessed with a weird bunch. But all of us are given imperfect people to walk the journey with. If you don't believe me, take a look at the person next to you. And so I'm just saying, you had 2 ways to go. Some of you know, some of you have just looked, gone, you're the most imperfect. And that was pretty rude. And that's fine, but that's all right. And so God doesn't give us a perfect team. He gives us each other. And what we have to do is we have to kind of work out how we're going to walk this journey, how we're going to follow him through this life. And like we said, not only does Abraham have this imperfect team, and he has a nephew who keeps making mistakes, him and his wife make mistakes, but Jesus, when he came, he didn't just come to fulfill this kind of perfect team. Right, who are the 12 best people that I can find? Jesus just goes up to a load of random fellas and says, come follow me. So he starts with that vague direction. He doesn't say, come follow me, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do this, this, and this. He said, come follow me, and I'm going to make you alive, more alive than you've ever been. And the bunch of ordinary people who make mistakes, they come and they walk with him and they follow him. And so, just as we're called to walk with imperfect people, that imperfect person that sits next to you, the question I'm just going to ask is, like, how are they doing? Like, but seriously, like, how are that person doing? Because it's easy to kind of go through life and just kind of be like, I'm assuming that they're okay. Like my team, I'll get back to Lara in a second. And so, but that team, like, sometimes, there are many times in my life that I assume that everyone's okay. And I assume they're okay because actually the alternative is I have to sit down and I have to eyeball people and I say, how are you doing? And we have to do it properly. And that's what we want to do. We want to be people who know what it is to really know how each other are on that walk. Not just to assume that the people around you are fine, because they might be, but they might not be. Okay, and so it's so important that we walk that journey and go through that. And this year with the youth, one of my real kind of aims with the young people, we've got our young people slide there, and so one of the aims is for me, I'm going to sit down with every single young person, like, just ambitious, but it's happening because I've said it now. And so, but the aim is to sit down with all of them at some point in this year and say, how are you actually doing? Like, where are you at? Like, we're not just going to do this where I chat at them and just assume that things are fine. I'm going to take them aside, we're going to sit down, and we're going to be honest. I'm going to say, how are you? Like, how are you really? And they'll probably say, fine. And then I'll have to ask again, because young people are cool, and it takes some time. And so we'll get there. But the thing is, just as I need to do that, because that's kind of my role, the young people, the best team that they can form, the best team that you guys can form is each other. Like my mate, the very much imperfect man, like we did it when we were 15. And we have prayed together, we have cried together, we have laughed together. I have laughed at him many times, and that's okay. Because that's one of the roles that he fulfills in my life. But we formed this team that as we all went away and we left and went to university, these were the people that I've known through all of these areas of my life. And we formed that team. And it's not just kind of an older person and a pastor. You form it with the people around you, the people that you walk close to. So, we are stuck on a mountain. Okay, it's not really a mountain, but I'm going to keep saying it. We are stuck on a big hill. It is cold. It is wet. The conversation has turned to whether they should just cut me adrift and leave me out there. I am a dead weight. I have got a massive bag on it. I mean, it was only me that was saying this. Sean and Rich were not looking at each other going, just bin him. This man's toast. He's not making it. But we are stuck. We are done for. We pretty much know this probably isn't the right direction. But the alternative is to go all the way back, which is about now an hour and 50 minutes. And it's already like 11 o'clock at night. We don't want to do that. All I want to do is quit. But the problem is, I can't quit. Because how can I quit? I'm on a flipping hill in the middle of nowhere. Quitting would be sitting on the floor in the rain. But man, I want to do this. I am saying to God, if this weekend does not change my life, then I've been sold a lie. Because this is rubbish. It's not worth it. It was worth it in the end. But just as I am giving up hope, out strides an unnamed hero. And there he is. And so what this unnamed hero has done is he has known that we must have gone the wrong way. And he has run down the hill the correct way. He has gone, they are not on the right path. And then he has run back up the wrong path to knowing they must be there. But he loves this. He's outdoorsy, so don't think of him too much as a hero. He does it for fun. And so therefore, he ran, he got to us, and then he guided us home. But not only did he guide us home, he actually saw me in a state of disarray, and he took my bag off me, and he was like, right, I'm just going to carry your bag, and we went across, and I was like, thank you, sir. And then Sean had to just keep talking to me to make sure I was still alive. And so he got us there in the end. And the thing with kind of being in that team is that we need to kind of be able to bail each other out. We need to be there for each other. And it's always, always going to be inconvenient. It's never going to be the easiest thing for Chris to do would have been sitting there, wait in the warm, hope that we'd make it in the end, and then see what happened. Okay, but he didn't. He came out and he ran in the rain. He came back and he picked up my bag, and probably took him about 3 hours in total to come and get us and take us home. That's not fun. I mean, maybe for Chris it is. But it's awkward. And the thing is, if we are going to carry each other's burdens, it has to be a bit awkward. It's never the default position. It's never the easiest. The easiest is to sit off, just do your own thing, be at home, close the door, don't worry about it. Okay? But being called to be part of a team and part of a church and part of a group who follow Christ is more. It's more than that. And Jesus models that as he washes the feet of the disciples. He doesn't do it just to prove a point. He does it because it needs doing, and he's trying to show people that really we have come here to love each other. And so, as we skip through our imperfect teams there, and so that takes us to the final point, the third point, which is that Abraham is given a huge promise. So he's got he's got really vague directions, and deliberately vague directions, because God wants him to trust him and follow him. He's been given a team that are not perfect and that are going to make mistakes. And then finally, he's given a huge promise. And in verse 2, it says that I'll make you into a great nation and I'll bless you. It's a massive promise. It's a huge promise. And so Abraham, as he's walking to this unknown world day after day, he has to cling to that promise and know that that's true every single day. And so often we can believe what God has said about us on one day, and then the next day it's a bit harder. The next day it's a bit harder. And he had to cling to that promise day after day after day. And one of the ways he does it is he builds altars. And on the journey, he builds an altar regularly to remember God, to thank God, to communicate with God, to be in worship of God. And 4.5 years ago, when we set up this church, Annette gave us a word about altars with the story of David, that when they went on a journey, they stopped, they built an altar, and they worshipped God. And the whole point is that we do not want to go on a journey without listening to God, without communicating with God, without responding to God. And that can be hard. And some of you are probably thinking, why do you keep going on about listening to God? And you've never kind of experienced that. And all I'm saying is when I read the Bible more, I start to see God just let things come alive to me and I go, man, that is for me. Or even when I'm doing that or praying, I hear a word and I think, man, I've just had this weird picture come to my head and I think that is for somebody, and I go and share that with that person. Because God is a God who speaks to all of us. One of our core beliefs is that we are a church that believes in the priesthood of all believers. Whether you've been a Christian for a day or 50 years, like God can speak to you. And the thing is, we've got to be brave enough to realize that if God is going to speak to me, maybe I need to share that with somebody. And that can be scary and that can be terrifying because we sometimes think, maybe that person's going to think I'm a right weirdo. And you know what? If you're saying something weird, maybe they will. But worst case, I am dressed as a scout. And so let's not worry about weirdos right now. And so it's fine. And so we've got to be brave enough to trust the huge promises that he gives us and to believe and live by those things. And so one of the things that we're going to do in the next year is that we are planting another church in the north of Warrington. So in Cinnamon Brow, we are going to plant a church. And some of you, right, fair enough, are going to be scared because some of you are thinking, man, how can we send another group of people? Who's going to do all the work? And all of these completely valid questions, they're fine. There's no problem with any of those questions. But the thing is, we're not going to the north because A, it's Lucas's great idea, or B, because it's easier. Neither of those things are true. The easiest thing is to stay as we are. And there's nothing wrong with staying as you are if that's what God wants you to do. Okay? But if we're called to do this, and that might mean we send away 30 people again, and all the challenges and stuff that comes with that. But if that's what God tells us to do, then that's the church we want to be. We don't want to be a church who kind of go, but God, that seems a rough idea. That seems a bad call. How are we going to manage it? Well, I don't know how we're going to manage it, to be honest. That's all right. We'll manage it when we get there if we trust in God. Okay? Because we can still be stood still and still be lost. We can say, God, I just don't think we can do that. And so we stay where we are. And if that's not what God wants for us, then we're lost. Staying still feels like it's not a failure because you're not trying at something so you don't have to fail. But if you stay still and avoid God, that can still be as much of a failure as anything. And so it's not about logic. I have a friend that he has a business and it's a big chain of toy shops called The Entertainer, and they don't open on a Sunday. And they don't open on a Sunday because when he started his business with one shop, he felt God say clearly to him, I don't want you to open on a Sunday. I want you to spend that, because he's a bit of a workaholic. He said, I want you to spend that time with me and with your family. And that's what I want you to do with this business. And they have grown to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stores, and they don't open on a Sunday. And everyone in the business world thinks that is madness, because they say it costs you no extra money really to open on Sunday. You have to pay staff, but you're paying the same rent and all that kind of stuff, and you could make loads more money on a Sunday. And he gets told that every year since he started. But his kind of thing is, God has told me to do it this way. And he said, maybe one day The Entertainer will open on a Sunday, but it won't open on a Sunday while I run it. And he said, maybe one day if I'm done and I leave, fine. But as far as I'm in control, God has told me to do it this way, and that's the way I'm going to do it. And sometimes God calls us to do stuff that is quite terrifying. It's not logical because it's a big promise that we have to trust in him. And so that's the kind of thing that we're seeing. So the three things that Abraham had to deal with was cope with the vague directions that he was given, the imperfect team, and just living in that huge promise. And so for me, very much this year, it feels like this kind of preach is something that I've just kind of walked out a little bit. I'm not an old man with Abraham, I'm not that old. The young people still think I'm cool enough. And so otherwise they'd have revolted. And so I'm not be that old, but I know what it is to kind of think, right, God, I don't quite know where my directions are going to go. I don't quite know what the next step is. And so some of you will know that maybe a year ago, last November or something, was the last time that I stood up here. And the reason for that is that me and my wife, we'd been to Mozambique on missions, and then we were moving to Bournemouth with the aim to go into being missionaries in Mexico this year. Okay, and that was the plan. It was kind of as mapped out as I've ever had a plan, and I like a plan, and so I could cope with that plan. But then in December, my wife decided she didn't want to be married anymore, and that was tough. And that was really, that's always going to happen. This is why I dressed as a scout. And so you can't be upset with a crying scout, can you? And so, but that threw me into kind of chaos, because I was like, man, I don't know where to go with this. Something in this world tells you when you try really hard, eventually it'll be all right. And so when I found something that was just out of my control and I couldn't do anything with, I was like, man, I do not know what to do. And so I came back up north, and I lived in an empty house for 3 months, and that was kind of deliberate because loads of very good people were offering me furniture. I don't need, people will know, they tried to give me a bed many times. And but in my head, I was logically going, oh no, but I might have to sell a house. And But the reality was, probably now, I just didn't know where to go forward. Like, I just didn't know what the next step was. I just thought, man, if I just get through today, I'll go in, I'll do my job, and then I'll just get through, and then I'll cope with tomorrow when tomorrow comes. It was hard. And what I needed at that time was that imperfect team, many of which I have told horrible stories about today, but that imperfect team, they came around me. Like, people would be praying for me, people would cook me meals, people would come round. Like, the amount of people who just came and sat on the floor of my empty house and chatted about life, or just hung out and played games, or ate pizza, way too much pizza. Like, some of these people will know. I mean, at one point, the human body, I checked this morning with a science man who was wrong, but we Googled it. The human body is about 60% water. I mean, I reckon from January to April, I was at least 20% Papa John's. I mean, like, we were like, there was a lot. Like, it was just going on. And so, like, but I needed people to pull around me. People came around my house and built furniture when it came to the time where I needed furniture, partly because they wanted to sit on that furniture without it breaking. And so, like, but people would just do all the stuff that I just couldn't comprehend doing. I couldn't see the way forward. And so what I needed was a team who would help me each day and would point me back to God. And some people who knew that I was traveling a lot for work and knew that that would be really tough and lonely, they just sent me a message saying, look, whenever you're away, we pray for you. And I just think, oh man, I just need that so much. I just need that so much. And so just as those people pulled around me, the fact is, though, people can do so much, but there's an element that they could not fix in me. There's an element that they can't sort out, because that's between me and God. Like, people cannot repair my heart. People cannot repair the issues that I'm going through. And for me, the biggest problem was that third thing, this promise of like, man, God, how can you say all these big things about my life when I just feel like I'm just defeated? And people can say nice things, but I need to come to God and say, God, I feel this way, and I know it's not true. And I needed him to come in. Like, you hear all kinds of stuff about time being the healer, and to a degree there's truth there. But in my experience, if you just let time take its course, it doesn't necessarily fix what needs to be fixed. Like, we believe in a God who is a healer. And I needed to take my heart to him and say, God, this is hard. I don't know what I'm doing. And it took me a day after day after day. In January, there was a worship song that I just listened to every day, because every time I try and pray, I could just say this one thing, like, God, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do this. And that's all I could say. And so I just listened to these sets of worship songs, and there's this one that would come to me over and over, and it was about, you give me joy down deep in my soul. And, you know, there's that part you think, you're taking the mick, God, like, joy. And joy didn't feel right, but at the same time, the more I listened to this, it just felt like there was just a peace. There was just you can get through this. You will, be all right. Because I knew that there was a God who had not forgotten me, that had not let me go, that had not abandoned me. And that was difficult. And we've got something that Lucas is going to give out some little props at some point. It's probably the right time, yeah. And so one of the things that somebody did is that I like giving out little props when I preach, because I don't know about you, but I am a forgetful man. And we've heard thousands of preachers. I'm a church boy. I've been in church forever. And so I've heard millions of preachers. You probably remember about 10. And that's fine. So I give out little things because I need to remember the stuff that God has said to me. And so you are going to get a thing which I'll explain in a second. But somebody came up to me in, I don't even know, January probably, maybe December, and they gave me one of my little kind of cards that I'd preached on Samson like a year ago or something. And it was all about not looking at Samson's life of what could have been and what he could have made and the failure that he did, but just kind of saying like what could be in our lives. Not looking back at the failures we've done, but looking back and daring to believe that there's still hope. And so in January, somebody, in the move, I'd lost all this stuff, I don't know where it had all gone, but somebody came up to me in January and said, look, we've got 2 of these from when you preached last summer, and we just want to give one to you in the situation. And man, that just broke me, because I just needed to know that despite the fact that my life is not what it could have been and not what I wanted it to be, that somehow they were telling me that God is not finished, but that we have a could be, that God has still got plans and he's still got purposes for us. And I just wrote, I'm not going to read it, but I wrote some stuff at New Year's Eve about how I just felt absolutely like that my story had been written and that the end of the story was that Adam Della was not good enough. And I remember as soon as I wrote that down, something inside me thought, that's just not true. That's just not true. And as soon as I wrote that down, I thought, right, I'm going to read it. I'm never going to get through it, obviously. But, it was odds on of crying, wasn't it? And so as soon as I wrote that statement, and I've done a lot of writing this year, because one of the ways I connect with God is I write down the stuff I'm struggling with, and as soon as I do that, it's almost like it brings those lies to the front, and God speaks truth over them, and God tells me the things that do matter. And as I wrote that, as soon as I wrote in New Year's Eve that it felt like I wasn't enough, I said, somewhere I know that this isn't the final chapter of my story. Somehow, from the ashes of my identity, I see something new. I see the cross standing tall amongst all of the chaos and the desolation. I see a man who walks to the cross with the determination that we would be people with different chapters. That as he walks, as he carries that pain, his heart screams out that the truth that rises above all of our rubble, that tells us that somehow that we are enough for him. And so as we look at that man on a rugged cross, something in me just knew that's true. That something within me just felt the pull of the one that somehow would declare me that I would be worthy, even though I just didn't feel it. And the thing is that, like, if I believe that about me, then man alive, I believe that about all of you guys. Like, because I wrote that when I was in chaos. And but the problem is, I can believe that one day, but then I have to believe it the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And that is when we need our imperfect team to come around us and point us back to the one who gives us vague directions, and he gives us vague directions deliberately, so that we would stay close to him and that he would guide us. So you have been given a compass, and so the whole point of this compass is not to particularly go walking with it. I'm not sure if it's the best compass in the world. Don't trust me if you get lost. Don't come blaming me using this cheap compass. But the whole point is that I'm just going to keep mine on my desk when I work from home. I'm just going to have that to say, life only works when I stay close to God. If I'm not close to God, then it's not going to work. And so he deliberately doesn't map out our next future for the next few years, because he wants us with him. He wants us close. So I'm just going to pray and then hand over. Yeah, God, we just thank you that you are a God who longs to draw us near you. You long to have us close to your heart. And Lord, I just thank you that your story is that as your people we are not finished. No matter what we are, no matter who we are, that not just as Life Church, but as individuals within this church, that there is a hope and a purpose through you, Jesus. Yeah, so just help us all to live that out, and whatever that might mean for us. Amen.